and welcome back to my channel where I'm going to cover additional customization options for the Barbarian class that were introduced in Xanathar's Guide to Everything. As we know, D&D is a role-playing game, and the overall idea is that while you're playing your character, you're taking on their persona and acting as they would or should. This becomes really obvious when good players, who really understand the game or have been playing for a while, might know specific details of a given creature or object, but they still play their character as though this knowledge was not something that that character knew. For example, if a moderately leveled party were to run into a master vampire, the players who have fought them before in other campaigns or adventures, or have a good understanding of what kind of creature it is and what it's capable of, stays in character. This means they play the character as if they've never run into this kind of creature before and have no understanding of what it is capable of, unless that character took the time to research vampires before they went on the quest that took them to the point where they encountered one. Now, a lot of players believe that just simply because they might be playing the cleric class, for example, or an arcane-based class, they're going to know instantly what a vampire is. But here's the thing. Yes, they might be a cleric, or yes, they might understand arcana in a lot of ways. They're still not necessarily going to have all the information they need about this particular creature and the fact that it's a master vampire as opposed to just something that is literally only a few weeks old or a few years old, that kind of thing. That's why we have things like investigation or history or insight checks. But I am getting slightly off track, so let's return to the topic at hand. These customizations work in a similar fashion. They give you the means to add new details to your character to help flesh out their emotional history or the character's appearance, and even some of their superstitions. Xanathar's Guide to Everything has introduced new tables that you can see here that allow you to make use of the provided information on these very points, specifically for the Barbarian class. These tables are unfortunately only available directly from Xanathar's Guide to Everything's version of the Barbarian class sheet, which you can get by simply clicking on Classes, and then when you open up the Barbarian class sheet, you make sure you click on the one that is next to the Xanathar's Guide to Everything reference here for its category. And if you compare the original Player's Handbook version of this particular character sheet, you'll see that before we get to the level table here, we have some different information. This is sort of a basic generic listing of the information about a barbarian, whereas this is giving you details on some additional customizations. In total, there are 3 new tables to pull inspiration from, or even directly make use of them when creating your character. The first is a personal totems table, which gives you the means to add personal effects to your character's inventory that might have deep personal meaning to that particular character. This totem can have a form of mystical meaning or ties to a memory to a deep personal event that occurred in your character's past, and to honor that meaning, they're carrying this totem around everywhere they go. The loss of this very personal item could push that character into very irrational behavior, giving you a means to act out in ways that otherwise might not have been available to you before. It also provides an avenue for you to explore this side of your character's personality and is a great role-playing outlet. Clicking on the table brings up a means for you to view the examples of the content that you have available to you, and you can either roll to make direct use of these items here, manually drag and drop an item into your inventory, or use these as a way to inspire your own creativity to be able to create an item that might be a lot more customized to you yourself and a little bit more personal to your character. Within Fantasy Grounds and generically within the pen and paper character sheets, unless you made your own character sheet, there really isn't a way to actually go through and store much in the way of details about these particular things here. If you roll them, for example, you're going to get a random selection that you can then drag and drop into place. And it will create an item for that if you drag it over into your inventory, or it will create a notes entry if you drag and drop it into your notes field. Either location is good. Here's the thing though, if you make use of the inventory item, you've now created a tangible item that you could potentially lose, which gives the dungeon master an avenue to make you sort of push your character into a behavioral direction that you're not necessarily used to playing with. Those kinds of things. And while it's the party that is actually the central meat of a given story, it's really the dungeon master that's sort of gently guiding it along to a certain point, and if he feels or she feels that the campaign itself is running a little bit too smoothly, this gives them a way of putting a wrench in the whole thing. So if you do decide to go with the item information, the minute you drop this into place, you're going to get an empty item field, if you will, or sheet. And what you can do is you can unlock that sheet and then start putting in some information. What type is it? Well, it could be an amulet. It could be, in this case, a tuft of fur. No, this is a small leather pouch, so this is going to be a pouch of some kind. Subtype, rarity, stuff like this. Unique would be the rarity. Cost would be 0 because it would be personal to you, but it's invaluable to you because of its history to you. And then you can put the details of what that tuft of fur represents in the actual description field below here. And I'd recommend putting a little bit of a weight too. Something like a tuft of fur might weigh 0.01 or 0.001 weight, depending on what measurement they actually use here. I actually can't recall. So that's one way to do it. The other way, making use of your notes field, means that you're kind of putting all of that information in place here, and it could theoretically get a little bit cluttered. So it makes more sense in the inventory for this particular table. So I'm going to delete that. The next option is a tattoo that you can decorate your character with. And it doesn't necessarily have to be just one tattoo, and it allows you to thereby adjust your personal appearance for that particular character. Much like the personal items, these tattoos represent a significant event that happened in the character's past, or may be related to their ancestry or their tribe in some way, and this is their means of being able to show honor to stuff like that. So while the totem itself might represent one specific event of significance, your character can have multiple tattoos, giving you an outlet to add in references to other significant events that have occurred. Each one can represent something different, such as something specific to the character, something specific to the tribe, or something specific to the character's ancestral past. Or it could be a large tattoo that has a combination of all those elements in it. Once again, the table can be used to inspire anything that you might want to come through, or you could even just simply make use of these directly within the description or the appearance of your character sheet. You can roll on it, you can just simply pick and choose one, you can use it to formulate an idea of your own. It doesn't really much matter, it's entirely up to you. The best place to store this information, though, is going to be within the appearance section under the notes field of your character sheet. And that's primarily because in this particular case, the tattoo is really defined around the appearance. You're not making use of the potential of the new magical tattoos that now exist, which would be considered an item that would be attached to your character and might have significance or actions that you can, or even abilities that you can gain from them. So in this particular case, it makes sense to put that information here, and then you just take this particular thing and flesh it out a little bit so that it makes it something that you are happy with as opposed to something that's just being suggested. Now, the last table allows you to come up with some superstitions that might relate to your character in ways to help you make a personal connection to that character. Much like the tables specific to personality traits, ideals, bonds, and flaws, this superstitions table allows you to create something that you can use to roleplay some beliefs your character might have developed over time. I'm going to pop that open just to give you an example of what is here, and you'll notice that there's 6 items pretty much on all these tables. I imagine that someone has gone through and created a much larger list that you can then import into Fantasy Grounds and make use of at your own leisure. So 6 is just an example in this particular case. Now, barbarians generally lead a life that relates more to their tribe or is more centralized around their tribe. And unless the tribe as a whole has traveled extensively to other tribes or locations where they were exposed to other cultures, there is a good chance that some of those tribes' misconceptions or preconceptions have been ingrained into your own character's persona. An example would be a tribe that very heavily distrusts outsiders and other tribe members. So that distrust and potentially that dislike is also going to be ingrained into your character. But this is more around superstitions. So instead of maybe a distrust, it might be that members of foreign tribes have some way of creating problems within your own tribe just simply by their visiting. So they discourage things like that. And your character would sort of inherit that belief as well. This over time can turn into a superstition that is specific to your character because every individual is going to understand all of these preconceptions in a very different way. That's what this Superstitions table can help you do, and it allows you to introduce some deeply ingrained beliefs that your character might have to overcome in order for them to grow, thus giving you another outlet for your own role-playing evolution and really adding some interesting detail to your character. And once again, in relation to your character sheet, regardless of whether it's within Fantasy Grounds or on a pen and paper module, probably the best location for this might be part of your personality trait. And you could either roll, pick one, or use one of these as an inspiration to create your own. And then once you've got it, just drop it into place or type it into place, and then use this to help flesh out part of your actual personality trait that you roll on the traits table through the background. And that's really going to help add that level of detail to your character that is going to tie you to your character a little bit more emotionally. Now, in conclusion, Xanathars does add more customizations that you can make use of if you choose to do so. This isn't a requirement, it's entirely up to you. This is your character, and you can put in as little or as much detail as you would like. I will say, however, that the more detail you can add to your character, the more personal that character is going to be to you, meaning that you're going to invest in role-playing that character to the best of your ability. You're going to care more for them, therefore you're going to be a little bit more cognizant of the choices and decisions that you make in game or during the role-playing session. And as part of that, you're slowly over time going to take on a more defined role-playing element, if you will, and become your character during these D&D sessions, hopefully only during your D&D sessions. As, in theory, when you create your characters, you're kind of really creating a small extension of yourself. This, in turn, adds to the story being told by your party and by the Dungeon Master, thus potentially making it a much more enjoyable experience overall. I encourage you to at least look these over, even if it's at a cursory level, and consider them for at least a little bit of inspiration to allowing you to think of things that are a little bit more personal that you might like to add to these particular characters and give them a little bit of flair. Who knows, something fantastical might come from it. But that does bring us to the end of this particular video, and I want to thank you for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. I wish to thank you for taking the time to watch this particular video. I hope you found it informative and useful to familiarizing yourself with Fantasy Grounds in general, and that you had fun in the process. If you found the video useful and you liked the content of the particular video, go ahead and click that like button to let me know. And if you have any questions specific to the topic covered by this particular video, or just have some comments in general, please feel free to post something in the comment section, and I will do my best to respond to any questions that are asked. Additionally, I do release content quite regularly, and it's generally specific to Fantasy Grounds or 5th edition Dungeons & Dragons at this time. So if you'd like to be notified when new videos come out, go ahead and subscribe and click the notification bell to ensure that notification is sent to you when I release a new video.